such a mission and having such a passion for what we are doing with Money Revealed that you would fly halfway around the world from South Africa to Utah to appear in this series? Well, that's exactly what Scott Picken did. And I have to tell you, I was mesmerized by his vision for closing the wealth gap, ending poverty, and having more people experience wealth in the world. Enjoy this interview. It's going to be really exciting. Well, Scott, I know you traveled a long way, so thank you for making the trip and taking the time to sit and have this conversation.
It's a pleasure. We always want to add value, and most importantly, I was intrigued by what you guys were doing, so I thought, how could we help?
Awesome. This project requires some international flavor. We don't want to just look at narrow pockets of influence relative to money and what it means, but also there's maybe a more global view that we have to talk about. So tell us about your background and what got you doing what you're doing.
Well, it's a long story. My family originally came from Zimbabwe. So in 1976, we were run out of the country.
When you say run out of the country, what does that mean exactly?
Well, literally run out of the country with guns at your back. My parents packed whatever they could into a car, and they left to South Africa. And we had 3 farms in Zimbabwe. And so at a very young age, I was actually only born in South Africa 6 weeks later. But at a very young age, my father and my mother taught me that education is the most important thing that you can have, and that no matter what happens, they can't take education away from you. Now, why is this important to the big picture story? Well, I studied and went to a good school, went to a good university, but literally within 1 month of finishing my degree, I got an airplane, flew to London, and then lived in London for 9 years, and have only ever built international businesses and international balance sheet, if you want to call it that. So the reason being is that at a very young age, I thought to myself, it's critically important to become a global citizen. And that I wouldn't be tied to one country, one asset class, one currency, and that no one effectively could do what they'd done to my family. Which is where, and it's not just Zimbabwe, it's happened in multiple countries all over the world. And I believe it's really, really important. And ultimately, being a global citizen is really what everyone should be aspiring towards, even if you live in North America.
So when your parents left Zimbabwe, basically, they left all their assets. They just had to show up and basically escape with their lives, and that's about it.
Pretty much they left with whatever they could fit in a car.
Wow.
So, we'd been living in that country for over 120 years.
Wow.
So it wasn't just their wealth, it was generational. And pretty much what they could pack in a car.
So you went and you hung out in London for 9 years, you said. What kind of work were you doing?
So let's take a couple of steps back then. And there was another really interesting part of that story, because my father did what we were all told to do. He went to school, he went to university, and I've already told you about the farming problem, but then he became a chartered accountant. And basically, he became financial director of a listed company. He trusted the financial industry like everyone else is taught to. And he pretty much did what every single person, you and I and every other person, work hard, go to school, get a good degree, et cetera, et cetera. And yet on the 1st of August 2005, he died broke. And for me, that really made me look at the world, okay? And I went and did the stats and the maths behind it, and I found it absolutely fascinating. In the Western world, less than 1% of people retire wealthy at the age of 65. Now, when you look at my dad, 94% of people follow my father. So they're either at the age of 65, they're either broke, dead, or reliant on the government. And only another 5% are financially independent, which I find fascinating because people think that's a good thing to be, but it's 25% poorer than the day that you got your last paycheck. So for me, that's just 25% poorer.
Wow.
And
so what you're saying is they might say, okay, I can retire, but they don't really have, they're living a lower lifestyle, or they have less means than when they were working.
25% poorer. I mean, it's simple math. They're 25% poorer.
Wow.
So, and the reason I wanted to interject with, I just went to London and hung out, was that I looked at life from a very different perspective. I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not following what everyone's told us to do. Go to university, get a good job, pay my taxes, invest, and one day I'll be free, because I won't be.
Right.
Statistically, it's impossible, practically. And honestly, I think we're all set up for failure.